This is the plaintiff, Leonard Scott Jr. He says the defendant's a former tenant who painted the walls of the apartment he rented her downright bizarre and crazy colors. He was forced to spend more than a normal paint job fixing the walls because of the bold, outrageous colors the defendant chose, and is suing her for the remaining $427.65. And she will hopefully learn you can't just go around with an "I can do whatever I want" attitude. This is the defendant, Naja Lunsford. She says she lived in the plaintiff's apartment for 13 years. She was a great tenant, and after living there for so long, she needed to repaint it at her own cost. Well, she's sorry. He didn't like the colors. But after 13 years, he had to paint the place for the next tenant anyway, and she should not have to pay for that. She's accused of having bad taste. The defendant has filed a countersuit for $196 for the return of security and electric bill refund.
All parties, please use your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket, the plaintiff is suing his former tenant because she painted the walls bizarre and crazy colors, and he had to spend a lot of money to cover it up. But the defendant says she had lived there for 13 years, and the place needed a paint job anyway, so not her problem. It's the case of, I see your true colors shining through.
Okay, Mr. Scott, Ms. Lunsford was your tenant for how many years?
Approximately 13 years.
30, wow, okay.
Almost.
Yeah, well, 13
That's
is
how
long
long
enough.
I've been over that in business.
Okay, so for 13 years she was your tenant. Was she a good tenant?
Yeah, she was.
She pay her rent? That's how I measure.
She paid her rent on time.
Okay. While you were living there, apparently at some point, when you received the apartment, the walls were all white or cream.
Yes.
And then you decided that you were going to paint them some very, very bold colors,
Yes.
right? Let's see the colors. I typically refer to these as spice colors. Okay. So this is one picture. Okay, I don't know why you're showing me pictures of broken screens, because you're not
I didn't
really...
charge for that.
Yeah, this is a brown wall,
That's the kitchen.
right?
There's no, that's,
What is this a picture of?
looked like the kitchen still.
No, I know. Why are you, what am I supposed
It
to
just
glean?
happened to be in the pile.
Oh, okay, no problem. So these are the colors,
Yeah,
right?
right. I have them in my phone.
These are
too.
the colors. Wow, that one's gonna give you some trouble. These already have been repainted, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So there was a $100 deposit?
It was a move-in special 13 years ago. I haven't done that since.
Okay, yeah, it's a bad idea. All right, so there's a $100 deposit. You kept that, and you're suing today for the remainder of $527.65, which does not represent the paint job.
No.
According to you, it only represents the priming materials
hired a
and the
company.
prime job.
Just the priming.
Okay, and by prime you mean painting over with a primer these bold colors so that after that it could be painted.
Right. It'll lock the colors underneath.
Okay. How many times did they have to go over the wall color with primer until it was covered?
I wasn't there, but I think I talked to the owner, and I think it took them 2 coats.
2 coats. All right. And that's what he's suing you for, because they charge him. That's like a separate thing from painting. You feel that you shouldn't have to pay that. Why?
Because I was there for 13 years. He never had to paint it while I was there. At the time, I looked...
Let me just say, it has nothing to do with how I'm going to rule, but if I had a tenant who I liked for 13 years, in a million years, I would never sue them for $500. But go ahead.
Exactly. But part of the consumer affairs in California gives guidelines about how much you would be deducted from your deposit for how many years you've been there.
In terms of painting?
Yes. And
right. Does it say anything in terms of
yes.
priming when you have the hubris to paint these colors on property that you don't own?
Yes. It said the tenant wouldn't have to pay for any costs.
Let me see what you're
repainting.
talking about. Again, does this talk about painting or priming?
This is talking about painting, but
right.
it says
Do you understand?
any
See, here's
of
the thing.
costs.
I don't think you understand the difference between painting and priming.
Oh, I do, because I always prime before I paint.
Okay. But have you ever had to prime a burgundy wall?
Yes.
Okay, I have. My entire house was these colors, and I have had to pay people to paint, to prime the walls. I know exactly how much materials goes into it and how much labor has to go into it to get those colors covered. If you have done that, then you know too. So I have a question for you. Why wouldn't you, did you paint the walls yourself?
Yes.
Then why didn't you just leave the apartment the way you found it and prime it yourself?
I was under the impression that he would have to paint the apartment
But
anyway.
you know, wait, just stop a second. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt that you were kind of ignorant about prime, but now you're telling me you're not ignorant about it. So you know that painting and priming are two different things.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to pay for primer and go over it twice. If the walls were still the way he gave them to you, he would just have to put a coat of paint on it, maybe not even 2 coats. Now he has to put 4 coats, 2 coats of primer, 2 coats of paint. So you've cost him. That's a different thing from the painting statute of how many times you have to put. This is probably what you're going to, you're just talking about repainting.
Yeah.
And so, and I get you here, and he gets you here. He's not, according to him, and I'm looking at it, and the amount seems to be truthful, he's not, he's eaten the painting charge later. It's just the priming charge that he feels that he shouldn't have to eat because you did not get permission. So my question to you is, did you get permission?
I did not ask permission, but for legitimate reasons, I didn't ask for permission.
And tell me those.
When I first moved in, I read the contract and it said no pets, and I had a pet, and he was like, "Oh, okay, well," and I said, "Well, can you change that on the contract?" And then he changed it. Then I asked if I could change the shower head, and he said that was a no-brainer, and that
that's a no-brainer because then he's going to keep your shower head.
No-brainer.
Right.
And then at another 2 years into my residency, I asked to have my boyfriend put on the lease because he moved in because it says in the contract that you need to, and he said that was none of his business. So every time I had asked him something referring to the contract, he just blew it off like it didn't even matter.
Yeah, but how much effort does it, you're painting the man's walls. How much effort does it take to say, is it all right if I paint the walls? Because I have found that the tenants who don't tell me that, it's because they really want the walls to be burgundy.
Oh, okay.
Because they don't want me to say no, and they know I'm going to say no.
It's a house of a different color. Will the defendant have to fork over $427 to the plaintiff? Judge Millian rules next. Welcome back to the People's Court. The plaintiff is suing his longtime tenant because he had to shell out extra money to cover up the bold colors she put in the walls. But the defendant didn't ask permission because the plaintiff always agreed to other changes in the lease, like adding a pet and a boyfriend. Did she make the right assumption? Let's go back into the courtroom.
I didn't even think about asking him because everything else I had asked him.
That's not a legal defense.
Right.
All right.
That's why I did it.
He has a lawsuit against you for the remainder. He's taken into account the 100, and he's suing you for the remainder of the priming. And I find that he's entitled to that. Let's talk about your counterclaim against him. You're suing for the $100. That's, I just ruled on that. But this is interesting. You're suing for an electric bill for November, December. Why does he have to pay that? What happened here?
I didn't get it turned off, and he never got it put in his name, so I ended up getting charges for 2 more months.
Who's that on? Is that on him?
Not
Who is
necessarily.
somebody living there?
No.
Was somebody living there?
I moved a new tenant in, I think in December, after, and they they should have
So
put
you're
the-
talking about the bills that arrive in November and arrive in December, right?
Yes.
So they would cover the 2 months before that. That's probably why the lawsuit presents itself that way. But,
Oh, okay.
All right, but so, and how much was that?
$95.
And so is that
64
particularly low?
Yes.
Right. So
And-
nobody was actually consuming electricity at your expense. It was just the fact that you had electricity.
It shows how much was used, and I'm sure he used it to use the
prime?
to sand, to
So
replace the
did you just
windows.
assume that she had turned it off and you were getting free electricity? Because
No.
I know when a tenant leaves, at some point I got to put it in my name, but
No, and I don't have to. I used to have an agreement with PG&E, the electric company. They would automatically put it in my name, or I call them and tell them it's going to be used for clean and show. So I don't
know what you're talking about. But PG&E is not typically that generous. I'm not sure
No,
what you're
they're
saying.
not generous.
Typically, what has to happen is someone has to pay for electricity there. I mean, that's a reasonable position.
My son has
Yeah.
something to say.
So the PG&E service, they will, once she calls and turns it off, they automatically put it in the landlord's name.
Right.
And-
So you don't call and put it in your name, you expect that the tenant's going to cancel it, and you didn't cancel it. Right. That's not on him either. So, in your counterclaim against him, 0. And on his claim against you, I find in his favor in the amount of the $427.65. That's my verdict. Good luck, folks.
Thank you.
So the plaintiff is victorious. Ms. Lunsford, you learned 2 valuable lessons today. Prime before you leave?
Yes.
Turn off the electric before
Yes,
you leave.
exactly.
Okay, what's your reaction to what just happened?
Well, I just feel I was there for 13 years. I was an excellent tenant, and he's just kind of being petty.
Well, the judge didn't feel that way.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
Okay, hope you learned something. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Scott,
Yes, sir.
did you think long and hard about suing her for this relatively small amount of money?
Well, I wasn't going to sue her if she gave me the keys when we did our pre-walkthrough.
Yeah.
And I normally I would have ate it. But she has an attitude. She thought the apartment belonged to her. And it didn't. And then she let me know. She'd done numerous things over the years besides pay her rent on time.
So attitude's important.
Yeah, I mean,
Very good.
She pissed me off, actually.
Okay, all right. Well, you got the last laugh, okay?
No, I'm not laughing. I got what I wanted. But
You
if
got
I
vindication.
won or lost, win or lose, I wanted her to know that she was not right.
Good for you. Thank you very much, sir. Congratulations. You get your money. All right, Harvey.
Doug, this is a truism. When you are a tenant and you want to alter anything in an apartment, I don't care what the landlord says, get it in writing. Send him a note, get an affirmation, and then do the work.